Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. On April 5th at 11:30 p.m., Farmington PD was given a call. Farmington is where I live, by the way, in northwest New Mexico. Farmington PD was given a call for service for a domestic violence incident. Farmington PD didn't verify the address of the call, showed up to the house 3 houses down, which was the wrong address, attempted to make contact with the homeowner. The homeowner, who was probably asleep because it was a Wednesday and it was, 11:30 at night, was probably asleep getting ready for work because, that's what normal Americans do. And they didn't respond to the call to service, again, probably because they were asleep, didn't hear them pounding on the door. And when they finally did hear them, the homeowner showed up to the door with a firearm, as any normal American would in this day and age and where we live. I tell people all the time, stay strapped or get clapped. In this case, this homeowner did everything correct. There have been incidents in the nation and in New Mexico where people have attempted to knock on doors or have knocked on doors and said they were law enforcement agents, just to find out that they weren't. And this gentleman answered the door, and rather than have a talk, FPD killed him. The story gets worse. His wife had actually had another firearm and had been firing after the initial gun battle started. Now, she is still alive, but the male in this encounter, Mr. Robert Dobson, I think is his name, he was killed in the incident. Now, this could have went way worse than it already was, because the wife could have been, while she was protecting her kids, could have been killed also, and she wasn't. But it still leaves some glaring things on the table for Farmington PD that need to be addressed. Now, having heard enough radio traffic from FPD to understand how they respond to any call for service that there is a possible suspect of a possible incidence of violence anyway, and they don't know if they're armed or not, they usually stage before they take off. Before they get to the place where they're going to go into the door, they usually stop, get everybody together, and then they make a force effort to go towards this. Now, to me, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. That delays response time usually, and when seconds counts and help is minutes away. I used to think that Farmington PD was one of the most professional police and law enforcement agencies in the world. And now I'm finding out that FPD is just as susceptible and just as poorly trained as many other law enforcement agencies in the area, or in the country, not just the area. So, how would this have broke down? Think about that. At some point, there was an incident commander, because they would have had to stage before they take off to go in to make entry into this home. The incident commander didn't verify the address. The initial responding officers didn't verify the address. And I can say maybe this was dispatch, but I highly doubt it, because dispatch double checks the information they're given before they even relay it to the officer. So, we have an incident commander who didn't bother to take 10 seconds to verify the address that they're responding to this call to make sure it was the correct address. They then respond to this call at this home. They have the technology to actually call or send text messages to everyone in that area. I know, because I've gotten several text messages from FPD for different incidents in different times and places. They have that capability. They didn't bother to use it. Instead, they pounded on the door, and immediately when the person showed up, the homeowner answered the door with a firearm. They instantly drew and fired. They killed this man. We have yet to see the body cam footage. I doubt we'll see it for a while, because I think that it'll show exactly what we all know, that these cops were scared, freaked out, and shouldn't be in uniform. And their first reaction to violence or towards any situation is violence. And this type of officer and this type of leadership does not need to be in law enforcement. So I'm calling every one of my listeners, and I'm calling every citizen of San Juan County and Farmington to actually call your representatives, call your mayor. His name is Nate Duckett. He's usually a good, responsive guy. I suspect he's not going to like me after this, but I really don't care, because where my problem is if you put on a badge and you've sworn an oath to protect and defend the citizens of a city or a county, and then you promptly kill someone who is following the law, they did nothing wrong but answer the door at 11:30 with a firearm. In today's society, where we've seen crime run rampant because of DAs not doing their job, or doing their job too well to let criminals back out, and we see people like governors aiding on and egging on those DAs so that they can have that revolving door for criminals. We cannot stand for weak officers, period. I probably know some of these officers that responded to this, and I probably know some of them that were too violent that day. An innocent man died all the same. Why? Because he was defending his home. Now, Chief Hebe, who is the chief right now in Farmington, New Mexico, he was the one that presided over the COVID crap, where Farmington PD backed up what the state PD did for closing down businesses and keeping people off the streets during the COVID bullcrap. Now, I'll give him credit for saying that he wasn't going to enforce the mask mandate stuff because he said he had bigger fish to fry. Nevertheless, an innocent man is dead today because of your leadership or your lack of leadership. This shows a fundamental lack of training in every level of Farmington PD. Not one of these people who staged officers, not one of these officers who were in charge of them, not one of the ground officers there bothered to verify the address of the call that they were supposed to be responding to. Fundamentally, these people, while no one is perfect, if you cannot be counted on to take 10 seconds more to verify an address to make sure you're going to the right, correct place. What would have happened if you went to a school, you went to the wrong building, and someone turned in around carrying a hockey stick? Would you have killed him? Because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time and you responded to the wrong part of that, and there is an actual shooting going on in another building, or another guy with a gun in another building. I guarantee you that if this was in any other scenario, law enforcement would be grilled a lot more than I'm grilling them. Now, this news has already made it to CNN, so this is now national news. And there have been several of these incidents in the country where law-abiding citizens who realized a long time ago that they're going to have to take some self-ownership and have to be able to defend themselves and protect themselves because, it rains. And there isn't a cop that's just waiting for you if there's a call for service. You may have to defend yourself. That's what this homeowner was thinking, is that there's a situation that I'm going to have to defend my wife and my kids. So they went to answer this bravely, just to be gunned down by the people that were supposed to be there to protect them. Now, we need to look very hard at the soul of the United States and the soul of those people that are always saying back the blue. Because backing the blue is a fine sentiment until you realize who's going to oppress you, who's going to take your firearms, who is going to kill you if you do not comply. That's that simple. You can be the biggest fan of law enforcement and still know that they have a responsibility to the public that they serve that they fundamentally got wrong on every account here on the 5th of April. There wasn't a point in time that one of these guys, one of these incident commanders, one of these guys ever bothered to double check that the house they were going to was the correct one. What if this guy couldn't hear too well? We've had other incidents in the country where a guy was killed by law enforcement and they needed hearing aids. 11:30 at night is pretty late at night for a town that usually rolls up its boards on the sidewalks and tells you to go home at about 10 or 11. Or actually, on a Wednesday, it'd probably be about 8:30 that everybody said, well, we're kind of done for the night. 9 o'clock's usually late in Farmington on Wednesday because most people work. Most businesses, most restaurants, even the higher-end ones, not even the chain restaurants here, close at 11. 10 o'clock, 11 on a normal work day. So why is it that FPD, with all the training and effort that we know they're getting, because they are very well funded for what they have, proof is in the pudding. There was enough of us that complained about your cruisers being old and out of date. You got new cruisers. You have the training, you have the money there. San Juan County Sheriff's doesn't have the funding that Farmington PD does. Why is it that you failed every level of training and every level of leadership when it comes to protecting and serving the citizens of Farmington, New Mexico? And how is it that any of you, especially the trigger man for this, and yes, he's a trigger man or a trigger woman, who shot before actually being able to figure out what was going on. And I'm sure in Farmington, it wasn't just one person that shot and killed. It was probably multiples that did. All of those people do not belong in the uniform, and they need to go away. And I don't care if they're friends. I don't care if they're my family. I don't care anything, because they do not belong to be that jumpy carrying a firearm in any situation. These people didn't belong in the uniform and never belonged in the uniform. And the leaders above them need to look very hard at themselves because they failed along with them. And I'm calling for every one of them, from the chain of command to the people that actually did this, to kick rocks and go home. It's time you find a new career, because law enforcement, obviously, is not the career for you. This hits home because I tell my listeners all the time to stay strapped or get clapped. I don't know this gentleman if he was a listener of mine. I'm just imagining that he could possibly be one of you guys that did what he was supposed to do and went to the fight, whatever was out there, to save his family. And instead of coming out alive, he died by the hands of the people that were supposed to be there to protect him. I've never been a huge fan of the defund the police, but it's making more and more sense, because if you hit them where money hits them, where money gets to them, maybe they'll start listening to us again. Until then, let's put it this way. Until then, we're just another target for law enforcement. Like, share, subscribe, be great.